Hey everybody, it's Ben Goessling coming to you from the TCO Performance Center with this week's Vikings Big Question. The Vikings are second in the league with just 30 points allowed. They lead the league in sacks with 16, and they just dismantled the Texans at home a week after a convincing victory over the 49ers. They have really become the talk of the league with what they're doing on defense. So the question this week is, how long can they stay a step ahead of the offenses that are trying to figure out what they're doing? To answer that question, I think it's important that we look back on how last year ended. The Vikings, of course, give up 120 points in their last 4 games. They lose them all and they miss the playoffs. So some of the complexity you're seeing now, I think, is related to that finish. Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores spent a lot of time going back through film, particularly from the games against the NFC North opponents that they played for a second time, and they lost to all 3 of those teams. And they asked, what have offenses figured out about us? A lot of what you're seeing them do now is in response to that. They're finding new ways to disguise coverages out of pre-snap looks. They're making more checks to get to different schemes based on what they see from offenses. They're blitzing less, actually, than they did last year, but they're getting more pressure from the number of times offenses either block the wrong players, or you get Jonathan Grenard singled up on a tight end like we saw on his first sack last week, or you just have a quarterback that's holding the ball because he's guessing on the coverage and getting it wrong and being confused. They've taken back a lot of an offense's natural advantage from knowing where the play is going with all of these checks. They're a lot more complicated, and there's a lot more of them than there used to be, so I asked Brian Flores on Tuesday about all of this. Thought it was particularly interesting to hear what he had to say about how all of this comes together in practice. They'll practice sometimes with crowd noise or without crowd noise, depending on whether they're going to be at home or on the road, but then they'll also have periods where inside linebackers coach Mike Saravo leads it. No one can communicate anything. It's all done with hand signals. They have another one where Durante Jones, the defensive backs coach, basically works on dummy signals, where nothing the Vikings are signaling with hands means anything. It's just there to throw an offense off base. And then Mike Pettin, their assistant head coach, runs a period on a lot of the stunts that the Vikings have used to get home on some pass rushes as well. So a lot of the complexity that you see from the Vikings defense looks a lot like what you see offenses do and how they've made themselves, kind of a step ahead of defenses in recent years. And that's this constant chess battle that's going on. Flores said it's awfully tough to do that against a lot of these offenses, especially with one like the Packers and all of the weapons that they have this week. But this has been a part of the reason the Vikings have been able to stay ahead, and part of the reason I think they'll be able to continue this success for a while. We'll, of course, have all of this covered for you at the Star Tribune, on our website, in the Access Vikings newsletter and podcast later this week. And we'll have a large crew going to Lambeau Field for the Vikings game for first place in the NFC North against the Packers on Sunday. So make sure you check all of that out, and thanks for watching this episode of Vikings Big Question. Have a great week.